Claire Kim. I'm the Director of Curatorial Strategy with the Here and There Collective. I'm here with Heidi Lau at her solo show at Sikkema Jenkins. And we're here to speak a little bit about your practice, and I think specifically about the particular show that we're in right now. I think that it would be great to start off with the title of the show, A Cacophony of Rocks, because I don't know if the folks watching on video are going to be picking up on the audio that's being played in the room that we're in right now, but I was really excited and surprised at the kind of emphasis on sound for this particular exhibition, and it feels like a new kind of horizon for you. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about it?
Yeah, this is actually the second time I've worked with sound in an installation. The first one, it was in Venice, where I had choreographed with a Cantonese opera singer in Chinatown to, I guess, reinterpret a piece that my grandma used to sing when she cooks for us in our kitchen. And so I think for me, like, sound always has this ability to kind of like capture like memories and energies, and I think kind of this like almost like passive hearing of like whether it's my mom sighing or like arguing or like picking up on their moods or based on the songs that they would hum to themselves is kind of how I have a sense of like self-knowledge. I think the term like cacophony is kind of like either a dissonance of for me like noises, almost like incongruent concepts that run parallel, that I always try to find like a middle point to like bring them together. So I thought of using sound for this particular feature here. It's because I was on my mom's deathbed and kind of clearly looking at her, but also like the sound of the machine of her life support, like kind of the beeping that almost sounds like a monster, and then mixed with her breathing, and then like kind of listening to the energy as it slowly go away into something else. They left a long impact on me. That was like 7 years ago. I thought it's important to kind of capture this sound that was released to me and then like kind of recaptured by these objects. I didn't make the sound. It was a collaboration with Anchit, who was here. When we worked on the sound together, I basically told him everything, like a lot of context, but in terms of like the actual music making, I know he has his own narrative, like this part, I know this creature is learning to play an instrument, like there's, so there's a kind of like an open-ended component to it also.
I was first introduced to your work in 2020 for the Death Becomes Her show at Brick, and there was a relationship to the Greenwood Cemetery even for that show, and since then you were the inaugural resident a few years back with Greenwood Cemetery and had the exhibition in 2022. And there is this kind of through line within your work, kind of exploring life and death and the threshold and the kind of the boundary between those two spaces. Do you want to talk a little bit about maybe how your residency has affected the works that we're seeing today, or maybe about your work with Greenwood Cemetery?
I've had a very, I guess, personal and direct relationship, I guess, seeing my mom the last stage of leukemia. So like, I think even going into the residency at Greenwood, I already had kind of my own thought about objectness and personhood kind of became very blurry, especially in like a burial ground. And I think it doesn't mean to keep things on each side. Like it's not like a thing to like make two things a binary. It's literally like, it's just a Chinese person thing to say, but like if you can visualize the yin yang, those two
There's
things.
There's like a porosity.
Yeah, those two things are it basically inseparable to begin with. It's never like either or, it's like either and. And I think that's kind of how I think about that there's like a big spectrum that I think through making objects like tease out, and I think about like animate and inanimate in that way, you know. Yeah, so like even when living things, for example, their animacy is still there.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense, and the way you're speaking about this kind of how one affects the other always, and they're always kind of related. I think it also speaks to how you're pulling at kind of imagery and inspiration from ancient texts. You have a very specific kind of relationship to particular, I think we're all seeing kind of myths. We're thinking through architecture as well as kind of mythic beings that are coming out. Do you want to talk a little bit about your research practice and kind of tying through these very ancient kind of texts and histories that are coming in and being pushed into the present space today?
So I've been working with this text called Classics of Mountains and Seas, which is like, it started being recorded in 4th century BC, and it's, I think in the West, we kind of think of mythologies as like a long time ago, like time immemorial, but like a lot of this, but this book literally had like 500 plus mountains, hundreds of rivers, and they have very specific clan and surname that are still used today. And some of the creatures are still in, I guess, contemporary Chinese popular culture. A lot of these creatures live in a matrilineal society. There's like androgynous beings that could like impregnate each other. There's a lot of like very like queer like proliferation of this world that like I was very shocked by, also, and that's kind of how I became to be drawn to this text. But personally, for me to actually make a body of work, see both like myself and people I know in these creatures, and so I think that's how I in my own way like repopulate exhibition space, or like reincarnate these creatures in some form. Through like making work about them. So this piece, Candle Dragon, her superpower, if you might, literally it's she controls time. So when she blinks her eye, it's darkness when her eyes are closed, and daytime when her eyes are reopened again. So like literally her body movement like correlates to seasonal changes. I relate it to the most because it actually makes me think of my mom, literally like day and night having to struggling with motherhood, having to keep it together and literally make the world go round. And even though it was a burden that she was not aware of, that she has to bear. In the text itself, even though a description for creature may be quite short, the sound description is always very distinct. Like sometimes it's like, oh, it's the sound of 2 arguing babies, or like the sound of like a sparrow arguing. It always jumped out to me that their sound is so
So it's the description of the sound that the creature makes is described in that kind of detail. That's bizarre.
Like even though the word, it would just be like, oh, this is a fox with 9 tails, but then the sound would be a very like long description.
Sound has been playing a part in the previous exhibition you were speaking about, and also a major part of the show that we're in right now from the title, but it's very clear also in this space too. I think that's a really great kind of way to transition into the third threshold that I was thinking about between human and animal that come in through your work, because even when you're speaking about this piece here, there's a way in which it kind of shifts from a being that is more inspired by the being that you read about in the text, and then also becoming your mother and becoming a symbol for that person. But there are also a lot of other kind of anamorphic kind of mythical beings spread throughout the various pieces throughout the exhibition, sometimes very small, other times more kind of an abstracted face that you can see throughout the works itself. Do you want to talk a little bit about that kind of boundary?
I could use the term animal, but maybe in the Latin root sense, where just things that have a soul and that breathes. I mean, it's true because I feel like this animistic beings are I kind of hide them in places, very much kind of like in the book where there are natural phenomena who have the same name as an animal, that a mountain then named after. That's this kind of like always transmuting of beings. There's always kind of like a changing, and there's almost like no fixed form and no hierarchy between all of these beings are being given the same resources to like proliferate. Which is kind of how, like the word like cacophony again, where it's like there's no like hierarchy of like what gender or like what or function it should serve, because some creatures really exist only for they to be pretty and then moved on.
Wanted to, before we wrap, ask you a bit about the piece that we have behind us. When walking into the gallery was really thinking that I was excited to have our conversation, and specifically this felt like a sort of portal, like an entrance or an exit, and it felt very in line with a lot of the themes that I had been seeing in the work itself. Do you want to introduce the work?
Yeah, I think maybe not just this piece, but I kind of see this whole room with all the totem as some kind of like almost like an entrapment. It's an architectural element I grew up with in tenement buildings in Macau, and also kind of the first symbol that like my grandma had introduced me to when she was kind of teaching me her Taoist teaching, like moon sun, like the door god, kind of like to like keep certain spirits in, but also keep something out. It's always kind of like, it's never like a board, like a boundary. It suggests that like things like comes and goes. It's supposed for things to like pass through.